coming tonight. I'm actually on last. We're having my 3 PhD students all looking at aspects of witchcraft and magic in Britain and Ireland, and the devil. We're having them first, and they're all relatively early stage of the research. So, and I would just say that a disclaimer with this. This is some of the imagery, even though it's 400 years old, it's not for the squeamish, okay? And when I say sexuality, I mean sexuality. I'll pass you over to Cara Hamley. Thanks very much.
I don't think I really need to add to that, except for it is going to be very raunchy, so bear with me, please. During the early modern period, a variety of supernatural, spiritual, and magical beliefs permeated all levels of society. Witchcraft was seen as the ability to cause harm through malicious magic, known as Nothikim, and witches were thought to bewitch people and livestock, copulate with the devil, destroy crops, and raise great storms in order to damage homes and property. The witchcraft beliefs of the higher orders of society, the elite, concerned itself with the witch's involvement with the devil and focused on elements of diabolism. In order to gain magical power and knowledge, the would-be witch had to renounce their covenant with God and make a pact with the devil. As such, witches were seen as a serious threat, acting as pawns in the cosmic war between good and evil, and as traitors who aided Satan in his effort to damage all Christendom. By comparison, at a popular level, the focus was on the tangible damage caused by witches. For them, the concern lay with the well-being of family, livestock, property, and livelihood, rather than the role the devil played. Before examining how those accused of witchcraft deviated from the behaviour expected of their gender, it is important to understand the position that women held in early modern society, and what expectations were made of them. Generally speaking, it was expected that a woman should marry, have children, and dedicate herself to the domestic matters of the household, thereby limiting her independence. As women were considered weak, there was a belief that they needed to be governed by men, and given this dependent position in the community, women were particularly susceptible to accusations of witchcraft. However, it ought to be remembered that witch is in fact a gender-neutral term, and in 1655, Thomas Eady defined the witch to be either man or woman who practices devilish crafts for gain or to keep others from God. That said, accused witches were predominantly female, and witches were generally conceived to be women. In Europe, around 75% of those accused of witchcraft were female, and in some localities, such as Essex and England, it was over 90%. This proportion was observed by contemporaries, with John Stern writing in 1648 that it was plain that witches were more commonly women because women were more malicious, impatient, and quick to desire revenge, making them viable instruments of the devil and better teachers of witchcraft to others. Many of those accused of witchcraft failed to conform to the expectations made of their gender. Accused witches were often reported to have cursed or sworn, or to have been aggressive and assertive, which was seen as very unwomanly behaviour. The accused witch, Joan Vaughan, was described as committing something either in speech or gesture so unfitting and unseeming the nature of womanhood that it offended all present, to the point that it provoked a gentlewoman to physically strike her. It is apparent then that not only men resented this unacceptable behaviour, but also conforming women. Likewise, in a pamphlet dated from 1619, another accused witch, Joan Flower, was described as a monstrous malicious woman full of oaths, curses, and imprecations irreligious, and for anything they saw by her, a plain atheist. Male witches are much less often represented in imagery. One collection of European images which does show witches of both genders comes from the Compendium of Karen. These images are demonic in nature, and here you can see witches of both genders trampling on the cross. This is an indication of their commitment to Satan and their willingness to renounce God. The witches are then darkly baptized by the devil, swearing their allegiance to him as they enlist in his service. The witches also inversely kiss the devil on his backside as a sign of their submission. Such inversions of the accepted world order appear frequently in witchcraft imagery, whether it be witches riding backwards on goats or bending to look at the world from between their legs. Interestingly, one image that shows only female witches has been involved in making potions from the bodies of infants. It was believed that the ointment the witches used to grant them the ability to fly contained baby fat. As healers, cooks, and midwives, women held important positions which made them susceptible to accusation, as the roles could be perverted in order to serve the devil. Cooks with a knowledge of herbs could use their skills to make poison. Often cauldrons make appearances in witchcraft images, as it was in these vessels that witches made their wicked concoctions, effectively linking witchcraft to women whose role it was to prepare food. Instead of nurturing and caring, the witch is a woman who poisons food supplies and harms children. This is represented in imagery, as witches are often depicted sacrificing babies and standing by cauldrons, such as in Yarenchenko's depiction of the Sabbath, at which witches were believed to gather to worship and to fornicate with the devil. In fact, this image demonstrates many of the base and most despicable activities that witches were thought to participate in. In the top right corner, a witch, naked, offers up a child to the devil, who appears in the form of a goat on a throne that is flanked by two other witches. And if you look down to the bottom right, you can see witches and demons gathered together to feast on human remains. The focal point of the image is in the centre, two witches hunched over a cauldron, and in the flames there you can see there's a human skull. The very top left, there's a band playing, and just below that, witches dance in a circle, naked again, and backwards, which lends itself to this whole idea of inversion. And just below that, there's a more formal gathering of witches and demons. So, returning now to the issue of how witches failed to conform to the expectations made of their gender, an image included in the pamphlet, a rehearsal both strong and true, of heinous and horrible acts committed by Elizabeth Style from 1579, shows a witch feeding her familiar spirits in a manner you would expect a mother to feed a child, a clear perversion of maternal nurturing. A distinguishing feature of the English trial is the familiar, a demonic idea which filtered down to a popular level and appears in the confessions and statements of accused witches. Familiars were spirits that aided the witch in causing harm and were believed to feed on the witch's blood through the devil's mark. This mark was believed to be given to the witch when she made her pact with Satan. Continuing with the theme of fertility, Hans Baldung Green's Witch and Dragon, dated 1515, is ambiguous and can be interpreted in several ways. The cord linking the witch to the serpent could suggest that it has just consumed the witch's baby, or even that the witch has given birth to this monster. However, Charles Zika argues that it is in fact a sexual image, and Baldung is alluding to sexual intercourse. Zika claims the body language of the witch, with her hips thrusting downwards, implies that she is taking the dominant role. Sexuality, then, was another manner by which witches failed to conform to expectations of propriety. Women were perceived as very sexually driven, and this was thought to be especially true of old women beyond childbearing age, as they lacked the natural control that pregnancies provided. For them, sex was for pleasure rather than procreation, and this was seen as both threatening and immoral. It was thought many witches entered into the pact with the devil in exchange for sexual pleasure, and would engage in sexual activities with demons and the devil at the Sabbath. There are a wealth of European images of witches embracing the devil in his human form, such as this woodcut from 1489. Often the devil would appear as a black man, as a man wearing black clothes, or as a handsome youth, but he would always have a tail or a clawed or cloven hoof to denote his true identity. An example of the devil appearing as a man in black clothes can be seen here in this English engraving. There is a distinct lack of sexuality in English imagery, though the pamphlets themselves sometimes include sexual material or at least allude to it. Sexual images tend to appear in the higher forms of art, such as engravings and paintings, and there is a lack of such images in England. Following the break with Rome, which occurred between 1533 and 1540, there was a failure to cultivate the arts in England, and so it is little surprise that high forms of English art were often primitive, provincial, and peculiar when compared to the works of Europe. In addition to this, the sexual witchcraft images of Europe tended to reflect on the demonic aspects of witchcraft, which did not have a firm root in England and so were not portrayed often in English art. Margaret Flower confessed that two familiars would come to suck from her, one of which sucked from her breast and the inward parts of her secrets. But the frontispiece of the pamphlet simply shows the old women with their familiars, and there is no hint of sexuality. In another pamphlet, a true and impartial relation of the Informations Against Three Witches from 1682 includes no images, but there is no denying the sexual aspects of the text. The accused witch, Temperance Lloyd, confessed to kneeling down to the devil in the street, who she described to be a black man the length of her arm, dressed in black clothes and with broad eyes and a toad-like mouth, so that he could suck her in her secret parts. The various texts that refer to the witch having her secret parts sucked indicate that the clitoris was often mistaken for the devil's mark. However, by the end of the 16th century, the European concept of the pact with the devil and the Sabbath did disseminate into England, though it remained a much tamer affair than its European counterpart, as indicated by this woodcut of an English sabbat from 1688. The images of Europe are far more openly sexual, and the works of Hans Baldung Grien tend to depict the witch as an icon of female sexual power. His witches were portrayed as masterless, often naked, with their hair loose and legs splayed open. Baldung's pen and ink drawing of a group of witches preparing for the Sabbath is laden with erotic overtones. The witches are naked, and the witch to the left appears to be rubbing salve into her genitals as she reads a magical script. All three have their hair loose and it flies wildly around them. The young witch being lifted into the air by the crone, and the witch on the right both appear to be in a state of ecstasy, with their eyes rolling back in their heads and their chests thrust out. The presence of human bones represents the destructive nature of witchcraft, and the burning candles suggest that a ritual is taking place. Some of the European images also appear to hint at lesbianism, as witches are often portrayed naked together in close proximity. However, lesbian sexuality was invisible during the early modern period, and references to lesbianism do not appear in the witchcraft tracts. In fact, it was not until the Enlightenment that lesbianism was defined and became discussable. In this highly sexual engraving, again by Hans Baldung Grien, three witches greet the Sabbath together, one old and two young. They are naked, entangled, and piled up. The image suggests play, and their poses seem to disrupt order, whilst exuding passion and sexuality. The two young witches are alluring to men, but the presence of the old witch interrupts this, and serves as a reminder that demonic temptation and lust is not influenced by age or beauty. To conclude, in terms of gender, the majority of accused witches were female, as women were the most dependent members of society and believed to be the most susceptible to the devil's advances. Furthermore, those accused of witchcraft were often reported to have behaved inappropriately, or to have failed to meet the expectations made of their gender. This proportion is duly reflected in the imagery, where the vast majority of witches are portrayed as women. This may be due in part to the treatises, which asserted that women were more likely to be witches. Sexuality was another manner by which witches were thought to fail to conform. In Europe, the witch was often portrayed naked and wild, embracing the devil in human form. By comparison, there is a distinct lack of sexuality in English imagery, despite the occasional presence of sexual material in the texts, and the devil is not often represented. This might be explained by the fact that in England the concept of the witch copulating with the devil was uncommon until the 1640s, when it developed under the witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins, and that the demonic elements of witchcraft remained much less prolific in England than it was in Europe. In October, depictions of witches can be seen everywhere, but this association is not simply limited to Halloween. From the fairy tale witch of children's books and Disney films, right through to the literary works of Jill Murphy and J.K. Rowling, and on to the cinematic portrayals of the likes of Hocus Pocus and The Wizard of Oz, witches continue to capture the public's imagination.